A filthy homeless woman who smelled like rotten eggs and wore torn clothes rushed to help a billionaire after a piece of metal cut his neck and blood started pouring out during an accident. He yelled at her not to touch him, but she ignored him and stopped the bleeding, saving his life. Later, he found out something about her that shocked him to his core. Before we continue, comment down below which country you are watching us from so that we can appreciate you all. Now, back to the story. The rain came down like the sky had cracked open, hard, cold, and unforgiving. People huddled under awnings, clutched umbrellas like shields, and hurried past puddles that swallowed their shoes whole. But then, bam! A sound like thunder made of metal and glass ripped through the night. A black Maybach, sleek, expensive, the kind of car that whispers, "I own this city," spun wildly across the intersection and flipped onto its side with a sickening crunch. Steam hissed from the hood. Glass rained down like glittering shards of ice. And just like that, the street transformed. People who'd been ducking from the rain suddenly forgot all about getting wet. Office workers in soaked blazers, teens in hoodies, a woman still holding a half-eaten taco, all sprinted toward the wreck like moths to a flame. Within seconds, a crowd formed, phones already out, screens glowing in the dark. No one asked if the driver was okay. No one called for help right away. Instead, fingers tapped record. Cameras zoomed in. Voices whispered, "Is that Marcus Thorne?" As if spotting a celebrity mattered more than saving a life. Inside the twisted car, Marcus Thorne, the billionaire behind half the city's hospitals, hotels, and headlines, was bleeding badly. A deep gash on his neck pulsed with every fading heartbeat. His eyes fluttered. He tried to speak, but only a weak groan came out. One person pulled him out of the wrecked car. "Someone call 911, a man finally shouted. "They're coming, but it's gonna take 10 minutes. Another yelled back. A woman near the front cried out, desperate, "Is there a doctor here? He's losing too much blood. He could die before the ambulance gets here." Silence, then nervous glances. People shuffled back, as if stepping forward might get them dirty or involved. That's when she spoke. From the edge of the crowd, where the streetlights gave up and the rain fell hardest, a voice cut through the noise, quiet but clear. "I can help." All eyes snapped toward her. She stood barefoot in the gutter, water swirling around her ankles. Her clothes were layers of rags, stained, torn, reeking of old food and wet cardboard. Her hair hung in muddy clumps. She looked like she'd slept in a dumpster, and she smelled like rotten eggs. A few people snickered. Someone muttered, "Yeah, right." Another zoomed in with their phone, grinning like this was entertainment. Marcus, barely holding on, turned his head, his face twisted in disgust. "Don't touch me," he gasped. "You stink." She didn't flinch, didn't look away, and then his eyes rolled back. His chest stilled, his hand went limp. "He's out," someone screamed. That's when everything changed. While the crowd gasped and filmed, she moved. She pushed through the ring of onlookers, past the guy still recording, past the woman clutching her designer bag like it might get contaminated, and dropped to her knees in the mud and rain beside the billionaire. Ignoring the stares, the whispers, the flashing phone lights, she placed one steady hand on his neck, tilted his head just right, and pressed hard on the wound with the other. Her movements were sharp, confident, like she'd done this 1,000 times. "Breathe," she said, low and firm. "You're not dying tonight. Not while I'm here." Rain poured down. Sirens wailed in the distance. The crowd kept filming. But now their faces weren't smirking. They were stunned. Because in that moment, no one could explain how a woman who looked like she'd been thrown away by the world knew exactly how to keep a man like Marcus Thorne from slipping into the dark. And no one, not even Marcus, if he'd been awake, could have guessed the truth. The wail of sirens cut through the drumming rain like a promise. Red and blue lights flashed, painting the wet street in urgent pulses. Within seconds, 2 paramedics jumped from the ambulance, boots splashing through puddles, medical kits in hand. The crowd still buzzing with nervous energy, and half-finished videos, parted just enough to let them through. Phones stayed raised. No one offered to help carry the stretcher. No one asked if they could do anything. They just watched, as if this were the final act of a street performance. But the woman, the one who'd knelt in the mud and saved a billionaire, was still there, crouched beside Marcus, her hands steady on his neck. Rain dripped from her hair onto his collar, mixing with the blood that had finally slowed to a trickle. One paramedic, a woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense ponytail, dropped to her knees beside her. She took in the scene in an instant, the precise pressure on the wound, the way Marcus's head was tilted to keep his airway clear, the makeshift bandage tied tight, but not too tight. "You did this?" the paramedic asked, voice low. The woman nodded once, not looking up. He was fading fast, had to stop the bleed. The paramedic didn't ask her name, didn't thank her out loud, but she gave a small, respectful nod. The kind reserved for someone who knows what they're doing, even when no one else believes them. "Okay," the paramedic said. "I've got him now." Only then did the woman slowly pull her hands away. Her fingers were stiff, stained with blood and rain. She wiped them on her torn coat, stood on shaky legs, and stepped back without a word. As the paramedics lifted Marcus onto the stretcher and rushed him into the ambulance, the crowd began to scatter. Umbrellas popped open again. People checked their phones, already texting or posting, saw Marcus Thorne crash downtown, crazy, or homeless mad lady tried to help lull. No one looked for her. No one saw her slip away into the alley behind the bakery, where the rain fell harder, and the world forgot her all over again. 3 weeks after the crash, Marcus Thorne opened his eyes to a silent, sunlit hospital room. White walls, soft lighting, the quiet beep of machines. His neck ached under thick bandages, but the sharp, life-threatening pain was gone. Dr. Chen, the attending physician, stood by his bedside, calm, professional, clipboard in hand. "You're stable now, Mr. Thorne," he said, "but you were very close to death. That neck wound was dangerously close to your carotid artery. If someone hadn't applied immediate pressure at the scene, you wouldn't have made it to the hospital." Marcus shifted slightly, frowning. "I remember someone tried to help, before I passed out." "Yes," Dr. Chen said. "And that person's actions were critical. They kept you alive long enough for us to take over." Marcus replied warmly, "I would really like to know who helped me, so that I can thank them personally." Within the next second, his expression darkened as he remembered something. "Come to think of it, I remember a homeless woman. She reeked like rotten garbage and wet trash. She was coming toward me, claiming that she could help. I was barely conscious. However, I told her not to touch me. I really thank the Good Samaritan, since that mad woman would have infected my wound." He paused, then added with a bitter edge, "For all I know, she wasn't trying to help at all, probably saw a rich man bleeding in a wreck, and thought it was her chance to pick my pockets. People like that, they have no shame, no remorse." Dr. Chen didn't argue. He simply looked at Marcus with quiet disappointment. Whoever it was, they knew exactly what to do. The pressure was precise. The airway was protected. That wasn't luck. That was skill. Marcus waved a hand dismissively. "Skill or not, I'll find them. If they really did help, they deserve thanks." He leaned back against the pillows, jaw set. "Tell your staff. I want to know everything about who treated me at the scene. Name, description, anything. I'll thank them personally." But in his mind, he pictured only the stench, the rags, the shame of being touched by someone the world had thrown away. The paramedics had no idea who the homeless woman they found at the scene was. 2 days later, Marcus Thorne returned at the edge of the intersection where his life had nearly ended. The rain had stopped. The street was dry now, swept clean by city crews. No glass, no skid marks, no trace of the crash that had almost killed him. Only a faint oil stain on the asphalt remained, like a ghost of what happened. He wore a dark overcoat, sunglasses hiding his eyes, but no disguise could mask the tension in his shoulders. He wasn't here as a billionaire. He was here as a man who owed a debt and suspected a lie. He walked slowly toward the spot where his Maybach had flipped. A few shopkeepers recognized him and nodded respectfully, but he ignored them. Instead, he approached the owner of a small coffee shop, whose awning had sheltered half the crowd that night. "I need your help," Marcus said, voice low after introducing himself as the man who almost died at that spot 3 weeks ago. "The night of the accident, do you know the person who helped me before the ambulance came?" The shop owner, an older man with tired eyes, didn't hesitate. "Oh yes, I know her. It was Amanda. She's been around here for years. Quiet, keeps to herself. That night, she ran right to your car when no one else would." "Where is she now?" Marcus asked. The man pointed down the alley beside his shop. "Usually back there near the dumpster. Sometimes she sleeps under the loading dock when it's cold." Marcus thanked him and walked toward the alley. The smell hit him first: damp cardboard, old food, the sour tang of neglect. And there, crouched beside a dented metal bin, was the woman. She was pulling a half-wrapped sandwich from a grocery bag, her movements careful, almost reverent. Her clothes were still ragged, her hair tangled, but in the daylight, Marcus noticed something he hadn't in the rain. Her eyes, clear, alert, not dull with despair, but sharp, like someone used to watching, waiting, thinking. He stepped forward. "Amanda," she looked up, startled. When she saw who it was, her body tensed, but she didn't run. "I'm Marcus Thorne," he said. "You helped me the night of the crash." She studied him for a long moment. Then, quietly, "You told me not to touch you." "I know," he said. "And I was wrong." She didn't smile, didn't soften. She just held his gaze, as if weighing whether his words were real or just another performance. Marcus didn't ask Amanda to talk. He simply walked to the corner diner, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that's been brewing since dawn, and held the door open. After a long pause, she followed. They sat in a back booth, away from the few early customers. Steam rose from 2 mugs of coffee Marcus had ordered. He slid one toward her. She didn't touch it right away. "I came to thank you," he said. "Dr. Chen told me I wouldn't be alive if not for what you did." Amanda finally looked at him, her eyes steady with sarcasm. "You thought with my filth I was not worthy of touching you, Your Highness." "I was wrong," he admitted. "But I still don't understand. How did you know what to do? That kind of first aid, it's not something you pick up on the street." She wrapped her hands around the warm mug, as if drawing strength from it. "I didn't pick it up on the street," she said quietly. "I used to be a doctor." Marcus blinked. "A doctor, at St. Peter's Hospital," she said, her voice flat, like she was stating a fact from another lifetime. "I was chief of trauma. 5 years ago, I was about to be promoted to head of medicine, the first woman in the hospital's history." Marcus froze. St. Peter's is his hospital, the flagship of his entire medical network. "What happened?" he asked, though a cold dread was already curling in his gut. Amanda looked out the window, past the traffic, past the city that had erased her. "Andrew Vance, my colleague, he couldn't stand the idea of reporting to a woman. So he sabotaged a patient I was treating, switched his insulin, made it look like I'd missed critical signs. The patient ended up paralyzed. The board blamed me, stripped my license, called me negligent." She turned back to him, her voice barely above a whisper. "I lost everything. My home, my career, my name. No one would hire me. No one believed me. So, I ended up here." Marcus sat in stunned silence, and then everything came rushing at Marcus like a flood. 5 years ago, the board meeting. The urgent memo on his desk. Reputational risk. Dr. Reyes case. Andrew Vance's name at the bottom of the report, labeled lead investigator. The dismissal letter, pre-signed, pre-approved, waiting for his signature before a charity gala in Monaco. He'd skimmed the summary, saw the words gross negligence, permanent harm, media exposure. He'd signed it without reading the full file, without calling for an independent review, without even seeing the patient's records. He'd fired her to protect the hospital's image, his image, without ever asking if she was guilty. Now, sitting across from her in a dingy diner, he realized he hadn't just failed to see her that night in the rain. He'd helped bury her long before she ever touched his bleeding neck. Then his thought shifted to Dr. Andrew Vance, The smooth-talking surgeon he'd promoted after Amanda Reyes' dismissal was now running St. Peter, and Marcus himself had signed off on her firing without ever investigating the case. "You were innocent," he said slowly. "Completely," she replied. But who would care to listen? The words hung in the air like smoke, thick, bitter and impossible to ignore. Marcus stared into his coffee, the weight of his own blindness pressing down on him. He hadn't just doubted her that night in the rain. He'd helped destroy her long before they ever met. After the powerful revelation, Marcus excused himself and promised to keep in touch. Marcus didn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Amanda's face, not as the filthy beggar he'd dismissed in the rain, but as the brilliant doctor she'd been, standing in a St. Peter's operating room, saving lives while he signed her career away with a careless pen stroke. By sunrise, his mind was made up. He drove straight to St. Peter's Hospital, not to his private executive suite, but to the surgical wing. It was early, but Andrew Vance was already there, dressed in a crisp white coat, sipping espresso while reviewing charts. He looked polished, confident, the picture of a man who'd risen to the top. Marcus walked in without announcing himself. The residents and nurses froze. Andrew turned, and his smile vanished. "Mr. Thorne," he said, quickly setting down his cup. "To what do I owe?" Marcus didn't let him finish. He dropped a thick file onto the counter, old, slightly yellowed, stamped confidential, Dr. Amanda Reyes, 2019. Andrew's face went pale. "I don't understand." "Open it," Marcus said, voice low and hard. Hands trembling, Andrew flipped it open. His eyes darted across pages. Security logs, pharmacy records, witness statements he thought had been buried forever. Then he saw it, grainy footage from a hallway camera, time-stamped 2:17 a.m., showing him entering the medication room and swapping vials labeled for patient hash, 4482. His breath hitched. This wasn't in the original file. "No," Marcus said, "because you made sure it disappeared. But hospital archives keep backups, and I finally looked." Andrew staggered back, gripping the edge of the counter. His polished mask crumbled. "I didn't think. I never meant for her to lose everything. I just wanted the promotion. I thought she'd land on her feet. She was brilliant. Everyone loved her. Everyone except you," Marcus said coldly. Tears welled in Andrew's eyes. His voice cracked. "I've had nightmares for 5 years. I see that patient in a wheelchair. I see her face, the way she looked at the hearing, like she couldn't believe we'd all turned on her." He sank to his knees, sobbing. "I'm so sorry. I was jealous. I was weak. I destroyed an innocent woman, and I've been living with it every single day." He looked up at Marcus, broken. "Please, if you see her, tell her I beg for her forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I'm begging anyway." Marcus stood over him, silent. He felt no satisfaction, only a deep, heavy shame, because Andrew's guilt was real, but so was his own. And the woman who deserved justice was still eating from dumpsters while men like them played God with lives. Marcus found Amanda the next afternoon, not in an alley, but sitting on a bench in a small city park, feeding crumbs to a sparrow. She looked tired, but calm. The kind of calm that comes not from comfort, but from having nothing left to lose. He sat beside her, not too close. "I spoke to Andrew Vance." She didn't look at him, just kept her eyes on the bird. "And?" He broke down, admitted everything, showed me the footage. "He's resigning. He wants to apologize to you." Amanda was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Does it give back my license? My home? The 5 years I spent wondering if I'd imagined my own competence." "No," Marcus said honestly, "but it can start to fix what's broken." He pulled an envelope from his coat. "The medical board has agreed to reopen your case. With the new evidence, they'll reinstate your license immediately. Full clearance, no record of negligence." She finally turned to him, eyes searching his face. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I owe you my life," he said, "and because I helped take yours away without even knowing it." He paused, then added, "I also want to offer you your old position back, Chief of Medicine at St. Peter, with full authority." Andrew's gone. The board will support you. Amanda looked down at the envelope like it might burn her. Then she shook her head slowly. I don't want to go back to St. Peter said, she said. Marcus frowned. Why not? It's your hospital. Your legacy. It was, she said softly. But that place chose reputation over truth. It let a man like Andrew destroy a good doctor just to keep things smooth. I don't want to lead a system that values image more than people. She stood brushing crumbs from her coat. If you really want to make things right, don't give me back my old life. Help me build something new. A clinic for people like me. The ones no one sees. The ones St. Peter's would never let through the front door. Marcus looked at her, really looked, not as a victim, not as a ghost from his past, but as the leader she'd always been. He nodded. Then that's what we'll do. And for the first time in years, Amanda allowed herself to hope, not for herself, but for all the others still waiting in the rain. 1 year later, on a bright spring morning, the doors of the Reyes Community Care Center opened for the first time. It wasn't grand. No marble floors or chandeliers. Just a converted warehouse on the edge of the city's oldest neighborhood, painted in warm yellows and soft blues, with wide windows that let in plenty of light. Inside there were exam rooms, a small pharmacy, a kitchen that served hot meals, and a quiet waiting area with books, toys, and clean chairs. No one was turned away. No insurance required. No judgment given. Amanda stood at the entrance wearing a simple white coat. No title, no logo, just her name stitched neatly over the pocket, Dr. Reyes. Her hair was clean and pulled back. Her shoes were new but modest. She looked like herself again. Not the woman from the dumpster, not the ghost of St. Peter's, but someone whole. Marcus stood a few steps behind her, not as a billionaire, but as a partner. He'd funded the center. Yes, but Amanda had designed every detail, the layout, the staff hires, the policy that every patient, no matter their story, would be greeted by name. As the first visitors arrived, some hesitant, some exhausted, all carrying invisible wounds, Amanda walked out to meet them. An elderly man with a cough he'd ignored for months, a young mother with a feverish child in her arms, a teenager with bruised knuckles and hollow eyes. She didn't rush. She listened. She touched their shoulders gently. She looked them in the eye, and then as the morning sun warmed the sidewalk, a familiar figure appeared at the edge of the crowd, a man in worn clothes, holding a paper cup, eyes darting nervously. He looked like he hadn't eaten in days. Amanda saw him. Without hesitation, she walked over. He flinched, expecting to be shooed away, but she just smiled softly and said, "Come in. We've been waiting for you." It was the same kindness she'd shown Marcus in the rain, only now she could give it freely, without fear of being called filthy, without being laughed at, because this place wasn't about status or suits or who smelled clean enough to deserve help. It was about one simple truth: everyone bleeds the same, and everyone deserves to be seen. And as Amanda led the man inside, Marcus watched from the doorway, not as a savior, but as a witness to the woman who had saved him twice, once from death, and once from his own blindness.